The wind moves like a living thing. It drifts over the endless white, whispering against the bones of the earth. There is no sound of traffic here, no hum of electricity, no trace of the world we know. Only a single figure walks beneath a bruised sky, a silhouette swallowed by the storm. Each breath escapes as a cloud, instantly crystallized, hanging for a heartbeat before vanishing into the blizzard's roar. The snow does not fall here. It devours. It folds the world in silence, erasing horizon, direction, and time. The figure pauses, wrapped in layers that would fail within an hour. Their boots sink deep into powder older than memory. The cold is not merely absence of warmth. It is a presence, vast and ancient, pressing close with invisible hands. And then comes the question, carried not by voice but by the breath itself. Could one of us survive here? It is an absurd thought and yet an irresistible one. Could the softness of the modern age endure the cruelty of this forgotten world? Could the hands that scroll and type and build towers of glass survive where survival itself was a miracle? For a moment the wind seems to listen. The snow thickens, curling in white spirals that blur the figure into myth. What remains is only the question, fragile, human, echoing against the ice. The Ice Age, a name that feels distant, safe, like something locked behind museum glass, yet the earth still remembers. Beneath our cities, beneath the soil and asphalt, lie the scars of glaciers that once ground mountains into dust. Every valley, every river bend, every curve of coastline, all shaped by an age when the world shivered and survival hung by the thinnest of threads. Imagine it. 15, 20,000 years ago. The sky was pale and relentless. Europe, Asia, and North America lay beneath walls of ice towering higher than cathedrals. Mammoths trudged through frozen plains, their breath steaming in the dim light of endless winter. Wolves with jaws like iron followed at a distance, and somewhere amid that frozen empire, a small fire burned. Around it sat a handful of humans, our ancestors, small, clever, fragile, and unreasonably persistent. Their faces glowed orange in the firelight, eyes reflecting both fear and wonder. The wind outside their shelter howled, but the flames held. They always held. We call it the brutal Ice Age, and it was. But it was also beautiful. A cathedral of silence, a world carved in patience and endurance. The cold stripped life down to its essence. Every breath, every heartbeat, every step across the snow was a quiet declaration. We will not vanish. Yet that determination was not born of strength alone. It was born of necessity, of desperation, of something deeper than courage. The instinct to remember warmth even when warmth had forgotten you. When we speak of survival today, we mean inconvenience. A power outage, a broken heater, a few days without comfort. But survival then meant awakening every morning and wondering if the sun would rise over the same faces as yesterday. It meant carving existence out of frozen air and hunger. The modern human, clothed in technology, insulated by convenience, is a creature of glass compared to the iron of those who came before. Yet the same blood flows in our veins, the same fears, the same dreams. The cold would bite, the darkness would terrify us. But deep within, something ancient would stir, as though memory itself recognized the snow. It is not only the question of endurance then, but of connection. The Ice Age is not a story of extinction, but of inheritance. Every breath we take carries atoms once frozen in glacial air. Every spark of fire, every act of imagination, is a faint echo of those who survived the endless night. Consider the world they knew. The wind carried ice instead of pollen. Trees stood like sculptures of glass. Rivers were locked in place, frozen solid for centuries. The ocean itself had retreated, swallowed by the ice, revealing vast plains where mammoths and humans walked side by side. There was no certainty, no comfort, only adaptation, the slow, unending conversation between life and death. And yet, even amid the brutality, there was beauty. The shimmer of auroras across a violet sky, the hush of falling snow that muffled even the heart's beating, the simple miracle of firelight on stone walls. They lived not despite the cold, but with it, an intimacy we can barely imagine. To the Ice Age world, cold was not the enemy. It was a sculptor carving resilience into bone and thought. Those who endured did not fight the ice. They learned its rhythm. They followed the reindeer herds. They studied the wind. They listened to the whisper of snow. We might call it primitive, but perhaps it was we who forgot. For in that frozen silence, The Earth demanded humility, and humanity learned it. Now, the figure in the storm walks onward, the question still burning within. The modern body falters quickly. Skin cracks, breath shortens, muscles tremble. The cold is merciless, but it is also honest. It does not lie or pretend. It asks only one thing: how much of the old fire still lives in you? A few centuries of comfort cannot erase hundreds of thousands of years of survival. Beneath the pulse of cities and the hum of machines, the memory remains ancestral, instinctive. We remember the shape of the wind, the language of hunger, the rhythm of the stars. The snow deepens. The figure kneels, presses a hand into the ice. Beneath the crust lies history, compressed time, frozen breath, stories told in layers of light and dust. Scientists say the ice holds the memory of air from long before our birth. If you could melt it, you would breathe the breath of ancient fires. In that realization, something softens. The cold becomes less of an enemy, more of a mirror. We are, in a way, children of frost, our species sculpted by the slow patience of winter. The Ice Age was not merely a period of hardship. It was the crucible that made us human. The figure rises again, snow swirling around like ghosts. In the distance, the horizon vanishes into white. There is no path forward, only perseverance. Each step feels like walking through time, backward, deeper into the long night of prehistory. The question lingers, reshaped. Not could we survive, but what have we lost by forgetting how? We have built worlds to keep the cold out. Walls, wires, cities that glow even at midnight. But the Ice Age asks a quieter question. Without the cold, without the silence, without the struggle, who are we? There is a strange peace in the thought. The world once demanded everything from us, and we gave it. We endured, we imagined, we built stories around fires that still burn in our minds. And though we may no longer live in that frozen world, we carry its echo in our hearts. For every comfort we hold today, every flame, every home, every word, was born from that ancient need to survive the night. The Ice Age gave us fear, but also memory. It taught us to dream in the dark. The storm eases for a moment. The clouds break. Through the veil of snow, the faint glimmer of stars appears. Cold, steady, eternal. The figure looks up, and for the first time, the sky feels familiar. Perhaps those same stars once watched over the first fires of humankind. The wind still whispers, but its tone has changed. It no longer howls in hunger. It sighs, almost gentle, as though the earth itself remembers what it was like to breathe beneath the snow. The figure takes another step, then another. The footprints left behind fill quickly, erased by drifting flakes, the same way time erases memory, only to uncover it again centuries later. We imagine the Ice Age as a world apart, but it never truly ended. Its breath lingers in glaciers, in permafrost, in the pulse of seasons. And within us too, in the stubborn hope that refuses to die even in the coldest dark. Perhaps in the end, survival is not about strength or adaptation, but remembrance. To survive the Ice Age was to remember warmth. To survive modern life is to remember the cold. The figure disappears into the storm. The snow falls heavier, sealing the world once more in white silence. And beneath that silence, the question sleeps, waiting to be asked again by anyone brave enough to listen. To answer, we must go back to the last time the world nearly froze us out. The storm drifts into silence. The world holds its breath, and beneath that hush, something begins to stir, not in a single night or season, but across millennia. The earth turns ever so slightly and its balance trembles. The age of warmth recedes like a tide. It begins with shadows that lengthen across continents. The sun's path tilts, its rhythm shifts. Summer weakens, winter lingers. The air thins, grows brittle. Ice creeps down from the poles, first in whispers, then in walls. Across thousands of years, the change is patient, deliberate. Mountains grow glaciers that flow like rivers of glass, grinding the land beneath them, grain by grain. Valleys vanish. Forests retreat southward, their leaves curling in surrender. The world exhales warmth and inhales frost. The earth is shivering. Scientists today can trace that tremor in the pattern of light itself. They speak of Milankovitch cycles, the subtle dance between our planet and the sun. Every 100,000 years, Earth's orbit stretches into an ellipse, pulling it farther from heat. Its axis tilts, wobbles, sways, altering how sunlight falls on northern lands. A few degrees here, a fraction of distance there. Yet the consequence is colossal. The Earth does not freeze all at once. It sighs into the Ice Age. Oceans sink as water locks into glacial stone. Winds carve the exposed seabeds into new plains where no human foot has ever trod. What was once temperate becomes tundra. What was lush becomes desert. Picture the world then. Europe blanketed in ice thicker than skyscrapers. North America split by rivers frozen solid for centuries. Asia swept by endless steppe. A sea of grass turns silver beneath the cold. The equator still burns, but the heat feels lonely, stranded at the center of a frozen globe. And amid that vast transformation, life endures. On the plains of what we now call Siberia, mammoths move in slow procession, their shaggy coats dusted white. Each breath rises like incense against the twilight. Their tusks curve skyward, tracing the same arcs as the moon above them. Nearby, woolly rhinoceroses scrape at the snow, searching for the last brittle stems of grass. Cave lions, larger than any cat alive today, prowl the edges of that silence. Giant ground sloths, slumbering titans of the southern lands, pull branches from leafless trees. To walk across this world would be to wander through a dream stitched together by endurance. Everything that survives does so by adaptation. Thicker fur, slower heartbeats, patience measured in centuries. In this Pleistocene realm, even the air feels older. It carries the metallic scent of snow, the clean bitterness of oxygen richer than ours. The light is sharp, the sky enormous. And though it seems barren, it hums with hidden life, the quiet industry of creatures mastering cold. Glaciers advance like armies, kilometre by kilometre. They devour mountains, grind stone into powder fine as flour. Beneath their weight, the earth groans. Where the ice retreats, it leaves behind scars, fjords, lakes, and valleys we still inhabit today. Our landscapes are memories of that long frost. If you could have stood then at the heart of the northern continents, you would have seen something few eyes have ever known. The world remade by silence. No birdsong, no leaves, only wind echoing across endless ice. And yet, this was not chaos without purpose. The planet has always breathed in rhythms, warming and cooling, expanding and contracting. The ice ages are its exhalations, its way of resetting balance. For every field of ice that spread, new deserts blossomed elsewhere, new rains carved the tropics. The global machine of climate turned with immense precision, a symphony conducted by celestial mechanics. Earth's position, tilt, and orbit guided the seasons like instruments in an unseen hand. Over eons, those faint cosmic adjustments rewrote the shape of every living thing. It is humbling to realize that the rise and fall of civilizations, even the existence of humanity itself, were cradled within this planetary breath. The Pleistocene was not merely an age of cold, it was an age of becoming. Life learned resilience here. The mammoth and mastodon, the reindeer and bison, the wolf and bear, all honed to perfection by the blade of winter. The ice sculpted them, and they sculpted the earth in return. Under skies streaked with pale auroras, herds migrated over continents joined by frozen seas. The Bering Land Bridge connected Asia and North America, a highway of ice that would one day carry the first humans into the New World. But that moment still waited beyond the horizon of millennia. For now, the world was ruled by quiet titans. In the long twilight of each glacial dusk, the temperature dropped further. Average global temperatures fell by as much as 10 degrees Celsius, a small number that remade everything. The cold was not uniform. It was cunning. It created corridors of refuge and pockets of life, sanctuaries where warmth clung to cliffs and valleys. There, species waited out the frost, holding the seeds of future ecosystems in trembling paws and roots. To us, modern children of stability, such transformation feels unthinkable. We live within the comfort of predictability. Seasons arrive, storms pass, crops grow. But in the Pleistocene, the rules of climate were written in shifting ice. Each generation faced a new world. Forests vanished within lifetimes. Coastlines moved like tides. It was a time of grandeur and fear. Imagine standing on a ridge overlooking a glacier that stretches farther than sight itself. Its surface cracked like marble, its colour pale blue, deepening to indigo where crevasses swallow light. The air bites the skin, even sound seems frozen. Yet beneath that frozen crust, water still moves, slow and secret, carrying sediment toward distant seas. Everything in this world speaks in the language of patience. Mountains wear down into plains, rivers carve new paths under ice, life retreats and returns, and always, the sky, immense, pitiless, and astonishingly clear. There were moments of brief mercy too, interglacial warmths when the ice retreated for 1,000 years, letting grass bloom and lakes swell. For a while the world breathed easier, then the cycles turned again, and winter reclaimed its throne. To study the Pleistocene today is to read a long letter written by the Earth to itself. Its handwriting lies in the ice cores drilled from Greenland and Antarctica. Frozen time capsules of atmosphere, each bubble preserving ancient air. Within them, scientists find evidence of the planet's heartbeat, the rise and fall of carbon dioxide, the dust of deserts, the trace of volcanic ash. Every layer of ice is a sentence in that ancient diary, telling of storms and sunlight, of oceans rising and retreating. The rhythm is unmistakable. Warmth and cold, life and silence, again and again. When we compare those ages to our own, a strange realization unfolds. We live in what geologists call an interglacial, a pause between ice breaths. For 12,000 years, the Earth has been exhaling warmth. The glaciers have withdrawn, and we have built our entire civilization in that fragile window of calm. The stability we take for granted, the rhythm of harvests, the shape of coastlines, the predictability of seasons, is not normal. It is a brief kindness in the long history of ice. In that perspective, the Pleistocene is not a distant memory, but a mirror tilted toward us. It asks, with quiet authority, whether we remember how small we are. The last ice age teaches humility. It reminds us that the Earth's moods are vast, that time is not ours to command. A slight change in sunlight, a tilt in orbit, and the forests that cradle us would wither. The cities that shelter us would vanish beneath snow. Yet even as it humbles, it awakens awe. For within that harshness life persisted. It found a way not only to endure but to flourish. Mammoths grew to colossal size to conserve heat. Arctic foxes changed color with the seasons. Grasses evolved to store sugars that could survive frost. Each adaptation was a hymn of resilience, a quiet masterpiece of evolution. And beyond the reach of our imagination, something else was stirring. Small, upright, curious. The early humans of Africa were learning to make fire, to craft tools, to read the wind. They did not yet know the glaciers waiting for them beyond the deserts and forests, but their story was already written into the turning of the earth. The Ice Age was preparing them, testing the edges of possibility. Across continents, the planet glowed faintly with its own bioluminescent resilience. The cold could not kill everything. It only demanded ingenuity. Wolves hunted in packs. Reindeer migrated thousands of miles. Trees learned to sleep through centuries. The earth, in its frozen stillness, was alive. To see the Pleistocene world in the mind's eye is to stand before creation in its rawest form. Not gentle, not kind, but magnificent. Ice and fire, wind and silence, predator and prey, death and renewal, all woven into a single breath. It is easy to forget that every step we take today rests upon land once crushed beneath kilometers of ice. Our rivers follow the furrows left by glaciers. Our fertile soil was ground from their debris. Even our sense of beauty, mountains, valleys, lakes, is shaped by their passing. When the earth shivered, it was not the end of life, but its transformation. The frost became a sculptor, and the world, its patient canvas. And somewhere, beyond the edge of that frozen empire, fragile warmth flickered in human hearts. Fire, speech, community, all would rise in answer to the cold. The ice had prepared its own challenges. Amid this frozen empire, something fragile dared to live. Us. Night has fallen on the Ice Age. The sky is black glass, dusted with cold stars. The wind sighs across the plains, carrying the long, lonely voice of winter. Between the bones of frozen trees, a faint glow flickers, a small, trembling heartbeat of light against the darkness. It is fire. Around it, a circle of shadows moves. Men, women, children. The flames leap and bend, reflected in eyes the color of ancient earth. Their breath mingles with smoke, white ribbons twisting upward before dissolving into the dark. The fire snaps and hisses, feeding on meager twigs gathered hours before dusk. Its warmth is fragile, temporary. But in this world, fragility is everything. They sit close, almost touching, their bodies layered in the stitched hides of reindeer and wolf. Each garment smells faintly of smoke and oil, their only shield against a cold that eats through bone. Beneath the furs, sinew cords hold the seams tight. Every stitch is survival, every thread a memory of the hands that made it. A woman feeds the flames with a splinter of birch bark. The sap ignites with a soft crackle, and for a moment the cave wall brightens, revealing ochre stains, ancient smears of pigment, handprints frozen in time. Here, warmth and memory share the same breath. Outside, the world sleeps in frost. The wind scours the plain, howling through tusks of ice. Somewhere beyond sight, the silhouettes of mammoths move like shadows of the moon. Their heavy steps thud softly through the snow, a sound as deep as the earth's pulse. Predators follow, wolves, their eyes burning yellow in the night. But near the fire, the humans hold their ground. They have learned that fear is a kind of companion. Every sense is tuned to it. The scent of the wind, the direction of the snow's fall, the echo of a cracking branch. They listen, always. Instinct sharpens intellect. Intellect refines instinct. Together they form the thin, unbroken thread of endurance. By day they hunt, not with certainty, but with patience. Their weapons are simple, yet precise. Spears tipped with stone, carved by hand until the edges gleam like frozen teeth. They track herds through the tundra, following faint traces, a tuft of fur, a crushed stem of grass, the curl of steam rising from dung that still smokes in the cold. Every step of the chase is a negotiation with death. Food is life, but food is also time. A single mammoth, if brought down, feeds the band for weeks. Its meat, sliced thin and frozen, lasts through the long dark. Its fat, rendered in stone bowls, becomes fuel for lamps, light in places where sunlight has forgotten to reach. Its hide becomes shelter, its bones, tools, its tendons, thread. Nothing is wasted, nothing can be. When no great beasts are found, they turn to smaller mercies. Hare, fox, ptarmigan. They set snares near frozen streams, dig for roots beneath snow crust, crack open marrow-rich bones from long-dead carcasses. Even hunger becomes a teacher. It teaches patience, reverence, and the quiet art of hope. By night, they gather again around the fire, the only thing in their world that glows. They eat what they have, fat-rich stews that steam in the cold air. The taste is heavy, earthy, primal, but to them it is warmth itself. The fat keeps them alive. Scientists who study these ancient diets tell us that it was not meat alone that sustained them, but the dense energy of animal fat, pure heat for the human furnace. Their bodies, lean and compact, burned it slowly, converting the oil of life into breath. In this frozen world, fire lived inside them too. Their shelters are as ingenious as their hunger. Some are caves, stone mouths that hold the echo of generations. Others are huts built from mammoth bones, rib cages arched and lashed together with sinew, covered in hides and moss. Inside, oil lamps flicker, casting halos of light across the curved walls. Smoke drifts through a hole in the roof, carrying the scent of fat and ash into the night. It is here, in the rhythm of firelight, that their humanity glows brightest. A child traces shapes in the dirt, the outline of a mammoth, a line of hunters, dots that might mean stars. The elders murmur softly, passing knowledge not through writing, but through story, gesture, repetition. They speak of hunts, migrations, the behavior of animals, the shape of rivers. Memory itself is their map. No books, no cities, yet their understanding of the world runs deep as the ice beneath them. They know how to read the wind, when it carries the scent of reindeer or the promise of thaw. They know the call of birds, the language of clouds. They read the earth the way we read words, with attention, reverence, and imagination. In them, instinct and intellect are not separate. They are one. When they set out across the plains, they follow trails invisible to us. The faintest depressions in snow, the tilt of a blade of grass, the rhythm of hoofbeats over ice. Their minds hold maps that no parchment could capture. Rivers long frozen, landmarks buried, the memory of stars. And in the quiet between storms, they look upward, The night sky stretches unbroken, dense with constellations not yet named. Some will become myths thousands of years later. Orion, the Great Bear, the Hunter. But for now, they are simply guides, to navigate, to dream, to survive. We often imagine these people as half-formed, primitive, standing somewhere between beast and brilliance. But that is illusion. Every spark of modern thought was already burning here, in the glow of this fire. They loved, they mourned, they imagined. Their hands shaped tools but also meaning. In the flicker of light on the cave walls, they saw more than shadows. They saw story. Archaeologists have found evidence of pigments, carvings, flutes made from bone. Even amid the hunger, they made music. What could drive such an act in a world ruled by cold? Perhaps the same impulse that drives us to tell stories today. The need to affirm existence, to make beauty from survival. Their lives were short, but their minds were infinite. To sleep here, in this world, was to dream of warmth, not as comfort, but as prayer. The fire dimmed through the night, embers breathing softly. They slept close together, the rhythm of their bodies keeping time with the wind outside. If you could stand among them, you might not understand their words, but you would recognize everything else. The laughter at a sudden spark, the way a mother brushes snow from a child's hair, the shared silence when a distant howl cuts through the night. These are gestures older than language, the grammar of endurance. Every moment here is measured by fire and hunger. When one fades, the other returns. When the cold grows too deep, they move, following herds across landscapes that seem endless. Their feet carve paths over frozen rivers, through forests glittering with frost. The horizon shifts, but the ritual remains the same. Hunt, feed, warm, rest. Life reduced to its truest rhythm. Anthropologists say that such simplicity is not deprivation. It is focus. Everything they did had purpose. Every movement of hand or foot served survival. They carried their homes in memory, their world in motion. Their resilience was not built from choice, but from necessity. In the Ice Age, hesitation was death. Courage was simply another word for adaptation. And yet, despite the brutality, there is tenderness in this world. The way they share the last scrap of dried meat. The way they protect their fires from the wind with cupped hands. The way they sing softly to the rhythm of crackling wood. Lullabies of survival whispered into eternity. Outside, the mammoths move on, their silhouettes swallowed by snow. The wolves circle wider. The stars turn slowly overhead, marking the passage of another night survived. Inside, the fire dwindles. Someone adds a final log. The orange light climbs the walls, revealing the marks of years. Handprints, soot stains, the outline of a human palm pressed against stone long ago. Perhaps it was made by someone who feared forgetting, who hoped that touch might outlast the cold. That handprint is us. We are not separate from them, only distant. Their hunger still echoes in our appetites. Their fire still burns in our circuits and screens. We build our own shelters, not from bone but from glass and steel. Yet the same flame flickers behind every gesture. The need to endure, to connect, to remember warmth. If we could meet them now, we might see not strangers, but mirrors, reflections of ourselves stripped to essence. No distraction, no noise, only life against the dark. The fire sputters. Ash falls like grey snow. Dawn creeps faintly across the horizon, painting the snowfields in blue light. The humans stir, their breath pluming in unison. A new day begins, another negotiation with survival. They rise, stretch, and vanish into the white, their footprints filling slowly behind them. The wind carries away the last scent of smoke. And in the stillness that follows, the ancient rhythm continues, fire and hunger, hope and fear, instinct and intellect intertwined. It is the oldest story the world has ever told, and it still burns beneath our modern skin. But could a modern body and a modern mind endure what they did? The fire fades, but the memory of warmth lingers. Beyond the cave mouth, the dawn rises pale and distant, a cold blue disk suspended over the horizon. The wind has quieted. Only the slow creak of ice remains, like the earth exhaling. In this light, every contour of the landscape seems sculpted from bone. Frozen rivers, ridges of snow hardened into marble, the vast silence of the Pleistocene world. Here, survival was not simply willpower. It was architecture, built into muscle, bone, and breath. The humans who walked this frozen earth were not like us, not entirely. Their bodies were instruments tuned to a harsher song, thicker chords, deeper notes. Where we tire, they endured. Where we shiver, they burned with quiet, internal heat. Consider the Neanderthal. Compact and powerful. They carried strength in every limb. Their chests were barrel-shaped, expanding wide to draw in air dense with frost. Their bones were thick, not the fine scaffolding of modern frames, but pillars shaped by a lifetime of labour and cold. Their noses, broad and arched, warmed each breath before it reached the lungs. Beneath their skin, blood flowed close to the surface, feeding muscles that burned hot, conserving warmth in even the bitterest winds. Their hands were built for the world they held. Short, strong fingers, thick with tendon and callus, perfect for gripping stone, hide or spear. Theirs was a body designed not for speed, but for survival. A living furnace beneath layers of fur and fat. Neanderthals lived across the cold heart of Eurasia for hundreds of thousands of years. In that time, they became masters of adaptation. They could butcher a mammoth in freezing winds, haul its meat across miles of tundra, and still light a fire before the light vanished. To them, cold was not the enemy. It was simply the air they breathed, and yet they were not alone. Farther east, in the shadows of the mountains, another lineage thrived, the Denisovans. We know them not by face, but by fragments. A finger bone, a tooth, a whisper of DNA in our blood. They too were shaped by the chill. Their genes, still carried in some of us today, granted resistance to thin, icy air. A legacy that lives in the lungs of modern Tibetans and Sherpas. Every adaptation tells a story of survival written in the language of flesh. Then came us, Homo sapiens, the late arrivals. Compared to Neanderthals, our frames were slighter, our bones finer, our bodies less armoured against the cold. And yet, we brought something else. Endurance. We were built for distance, long hunts, long migrations, long nights. Our slender forms shed heat more efficiently, allowing us to travel farther under the sun and survive on less. But in the cold, that same design became a challenge. Our ancestors compensated with brilliance. Fire, clothing, shelter. These were not luxuries. They were prosthetics for survival. When the body faltered, the mind intervened. A mammoth bone hut was an extension of the rib cage. A fire was an external heartbeat. A fur cloak became new skin. Even so, biology still mattered. Modern humans carried traces of their colder cousins through ancient interbreeding. Fragments of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA live quietly in us. Genes that regulate keratin in our skin, hemoglobin in our blood, and perhaps even how our bodies respond to cold stress. It is estimated that between 1% and 4% of the genome in non-African populations descends from these archaic lineages, tiny echoes of the Ice Age that once defined survival. Yet, across millennia, comfort changed the equation. Our species adapted not to the cold, but away from it. We became architects of warmth, fire, clothing, shelter, civilization, each layer distancing us from the raw conversation between flesh and frost. Our bodies softened in response. The thick brown fat that once kindled heat within us diminished. Our bones grew lighter. Our immune systems recalibrated for different battles. Today, only traces of that ancestral resilience remain. Scientists have studied this, not through time travel, but through endurance. In the Netherlands, researchers at Radboud University examined the body of Wim Hof, the Iceman, famous for meditating in ice baths and scaling snowy peaks in little more than shorts. His secret is not supernatural, but physiological. Controlled breathing, cold exposure, and mental focus trigger dormant systems of thermogenesis. The body's forgotten ability to generate heat. Through training, Hof and others have reawakened the machinery of survival buried beneath layers of modern comfort. It is a reminder that the Ice Age is not gone. It sleeps beneath the skin. When exposed to cold, the human body still mounts an ancient defense. Blood vessels constrict, conserving warmth at the core. Muscles shiver to generate heat. In some individuals, brown adipose tissue, brown fat, activates, burning calories to produce warmth, just as it did for our ancestors. Infants have it in abundance, adults only remnants. Yet, through exposure and practice, it can grow again. a small biological echo of the world we left behind. Studies on Arctic populations show further adaptation. The Inuit, for example, exhibit unique genetic mutations that affect fatty acid metabolism, allowing them to process diets rich in marine fat, a mirror of Ice Age nutrition. Their physiology conserves heat efficiently, maintaining body temperature even when external air dips below freezing. But these are exceptions. For most of us, warmth has made us fragile. Our cities are climate-controlled, our food abundant, our nights lit. We no longer depend on stored fat for survival or on vigilance for safety. Our internal thermostats, once fine-tuned to wilderness, have dulled. When cold seeps in, it shocks us. When hunger strikes, it alarms us. The very systems that once defined humanity, endurance, patience, adaptation, now lie mostly dormant. Anthropologists call this the paradox of progress. The more we master the environment, the less capable we become of surviving without that mastery. In controlled studies, subjects placed in cold water begin to lose dexterity within minutes. Core body temperature drops below 35 degrees, hypothermia's edge, in less than half an hour. The same exposure that our Ice Age ancestors endured nightly could kill a modern human before dawn. It's not only the body that has changed, but its relationship with discomfort. Where once we leaned into the cold, now we recoil. We equate comfort with safety and struggle with failure. Yet the Ice Age required a different understanding, one in which pain was information and hardship was instruction. The ache of frost was a signal. Move, eat, build, endure. Imagine standing barefoot in that ancient snowfield. Your breath crystallizes in the air. Your skin screams against the cold. Within moments, blood vessels clamp shut, your limbs numb, your thoughts slow. Every instinct demands retreat, but for them, retreat was impossible. They learned not to fight the cold, but to live within it, to bend like flame, not resist like stone. This is not just biology, it is philosophy. The physiology of survival was a dialogue between body and world. Muscles spoke to the mountain, breath answered the wind. Their endurance was not defiance, but harmony, a steady exchange of energy between creature and earth. Compare this to the modern condition. We are buffered from nature by layers of invention: glass, metal, insulation, convenience. Our muscles remember motion, but our lives demand stillness. We sit, we warm, we shield, and call it progress. Yet somewhere deep within, the ancient systems still wait, dormant, whispering in the dark. When scientists study cold adaptation today, they find not limits, but potential. Experiments with controlled exposure, cold plunges, breath regulation, fasting, reveal that the human body still carries the genetic memory of resilience. It can relearn what it once knew instinctively. Heart rate steadies, metabolism adjusts, the mind quiets into a kind of primitive focus. For brief moments, we become again what we were, creatures built for endurance, capable of thriving on the edge of what seems impossible. Even our psychology responds. Subjects trained to endure cold often report calm, not panic. The body's alarm system transforms into stillness. Fear gives way to clarity. Perhaps this too is inheritance. The same mental poise that allowed a small band of humans to wait out a blizzard, trusting their breath, their fire, and each other. So, could a modern human survive the Ice Age? Biologically, perhaps, with effort, with adaptation, with the reawakening of dormant systems. But the ease of warmth has rewired us. We are no longer built to endure the cold. We are built to avoid it. Comfort has become both our triumph and our weakness. Still, there is beauty in that fragility. It reminds us of what was once demanded to stay alive, and of the astonishing intelligence hidden in every heartbeat that carried us here. The Ice Age forged bodies of iron and lungs of wind. It sculpted a physiology that did not fight the earth, but belonged to it. And though millennia have softened us, the memory remains, not in words, but in genes, in breath, in the quiet persistence that still defines what it means to be human. For survival, then as now, was never only physical, but physical strength was only half the battle. The mind had to follow. The night returns. The world outside the cave is a single breath of darkness, vast, patient, unbroken. The wind moans through the valley, brushing snow against the stone like the whisper of an old hand. Inside, the fire burns low. Its light flickers across sleeping forms, tracing shadows on the walls. A child stirs. A small sound escapes, a cry, thin and frightened, swallowed almost immediately by the wind. The mother wakes. She moves quietly, her movements softened by habit. The hide beneath her rustles as she shifts closer to the child, wrapping her arms around the trembling body. Her breath fogs in the cold air. She rocks slowly, murmuring sounds that are not quite words, a rhythm older than speech, meant to calm the heart more than the mind. The child's crying fades. The wind continues. In the dim glow, the mother's eyes remain open, reflecting the dance of firelight. She listens to the breathing of the others, to the crackle of embers, to the endless winter pressing against the cave's mouth. In this stillness, fear and love are the same thing. This was the psychology of endurance. To survive the Ice Age was to live not only against hunger and cold, but against the weight of time itself. The days that stretched endlessly grey, the nights that arrived too soon and lasted too long. There were no distractions, no escape from silence. Every sound mattered. The snap of ice, the distant howl of a predator, the subtle sigh of wind that might signal a coming storm. In such a world, the mind could not wander. It had to remain steady, attuned, and calm. Modern psychologists call this state hypervigilance, an unbroken awareness, a readiness to act. But for our ancestors, it was not a condition to be treated. It was a necessity. Their minds lived in rhythm with the environment, neither anxious nor idle but alert, like the fire that never fully died. Yet vigilance came with cost. Isolation was constant. For months, even years, a small band might see no other humans. Their world was reduced to a few familiar faces, kin bound not only by blood, but by need. Loneliness was not an emotion. It was air. To endure it required imagination, the ability to find meaning where there was none, to create comfort from memory, song, or dream. Perhaps that is why they painted. In the depths of caves where light barely reached, they left marks, herds of bison, running horses, handprints pressed into rock. These were not decorations. They were conversations with silence. Each stroke was a defiance of emptiness, a message to the unseen. We are here. We remember. We endure. Anthropologists suggest that this art served psychological survival as much as spiritual. It gave shape to fear. It turned chaos into story. In drawing the hunt, they rehearsed it. In painting the animal, they honored it. Creation became a mirror for endurance, a way to keep the mind alive when the body faltered. Silence itself became a companion. In the Ice Age, silence was not absence. It was presence. It filled the spaces between heartbeat and breath. It was the sound of the earth thinking. To live within it required a different kind of courage, the willingness to meet one's own thoughts, unguarded and unbroken. Today, that silence would terrify us. Our modern minds, conditioned by noise and light, recoil from stillness. We measure comfort by distraction, messages, screens, sound. The pause between moments feels like loss. Yet for thousands of years, silence was survival. It was how one listened for danger, how one felt the shift in weather, how one recognized the subtle language of the world. When you are surrounded by snow and stone, the mind learns a strange serenity. The Ice Age tested not just intellect, but patience. Hunger could last for days. Rescue never came. There were no promises, only endurance. Modern psychology speaks of grit or resilience, but those are pale reflections of what was required then. Endurance was not the refusal to break. It was learning how to bend without losing shape. A mother could not stop the storm, but she could hold her child through it. The hunters could not summon herds, but they could wait, sharpen their tools, whisper encouragement. The smallest gestures, a touch, a shared flame, a murmured story, became acts of resistance. In the Ice Age, love was survival disguised as tenderness. The modern mind, softened by ease, often mistakes comfort for strength. We seek control, not patience, pleasure, not presence. Yet the humans who lived beneath that endless sky knew the opposite truth. Strength was not loud or visible. It was quiet, repetitive, and often invisible. The simple act of enduring without losing wonder. Fear was constant, but it was familiar. Predators prowled. Storms could trap them for weeks. Starvation crept close, always unseen. But fear did not paralyze them. It instructed them. It kept the senses alive, tuned to every shift in sound or scent. In the modern world, we treat fear as an error, something to be silenced or cured. To them, it was a guide. Modern research on long-term isolation, in Arctic expeditions, space simulations, submarine crews, reveals how the human mind reacts to confinement. At first, anxiety rises, then the psyche adapts. A rhythm forms. Small rituals, cleaning tools, sharing meals, watching the light change, become anchors for sanity. It's the same pattern our ancestors followed instinctively. Repetition as survival. They marked time by tasks. The scraping of hides, the grinding of pigments, the fletching of arrows. All kept the hands busy, and thus the mind steady. Stillness without purpose could turn dangerous. The imagination could slip into despair. To prevent that, they built structure from scarcity. Work became meditation. We know this pattern well, though in different clothing. During modern crises, isolation, disaster, lockdown, people rediscover the same instincts. Bread baking, crafting, routine. These are echoes of Ice Age psychology. Beneath the surface, our minds remember what it takes to stay human when the world grows small. But endurance was not only about waiting. It was about faith. Not in gods necessarily, but in continuity. The belief that dawn would come, that the hunt would succeed, that the storm would end. Without that faith, the fire would die not from cold, but from despair. Imagine that cave again. The storm outside has grown wild. Snow drives against the rocks, piling at the entrance. Inside, the flames flicker lower. The mother still holds the child, whispering rhythmically. The sound of her voice merges with the hiss of wind. Nearby, an elder stirs, adds a branch to the fire, and watches the light return. That small act, adding a branch, is a declaration of belief, a statement that tomorrow still exists. This is what the modern world often forgets, that endurance is not a matter of dominance, but of trust. To survive the Ice Age was to trust in the body's wisdom, in the Earth's cycles, in the shared strength of others. The mind could not afford panic. It had to rest in something larger than itself. We speak now of mental resilience as therapy, training, or mindset. But for them, it was a way of being. They did not separate mind from world. Their thoughts were woven into the landscape. The smell of smoke, the color of frost, the weight of snow on fur. Anthropologists studying indigenous Arctic communities have observed a similar mental rhythm: serenity amid hardship, patience amid scarcity. The word some use is sisu, a Finnish term that means not courage, but quiet perseverance. It captures the spirit of those who face the storm without expectation of ease. The Ice Age mind was shaped by sisu. It knew that suffering was not failure. It was simply the cost of living in a world that demanded presence. Perhaps this is the greatest contrast with us. Our ancestors endured solitude. We fear it. They listened to silence. We drown it. They faced discomfort and found meaning within it. We flee from it, inventing endless noise to hide our fragility. But deep down, the same machinery still hums, waiting to be called upon when life narrows to its essentials. Even today, in modern Arctic research camps, scientists report strange moments of calm. After days of wind and cold, after monotony and exhaustion, a shift occurs. The mind stops resisting. The silence becomes beautiful. The horizon, empty and white, feels vast and forgiving. It's as if something ancient within recognizes home. That recognition, the acceptance of hardship as part of existence, is the psychology of endurance. It is not optimism, but surrender, a trust that life continues even when the world is indifferent. So the mother keeps holding her child. The hunters keep sharpening their tools. The fire keeps breathing. Outside, the storm howls, not in malice, but as reminder. Endurance was never about defeating the cold. It was about living inside it, and when morning finally arrives, grey and slow, the snow will glitter like glass. The mother will rise, tired but calm. The child will wake to the sound of water dripping from icicles. The fire will smoke faintly, the smell of life lingering in the air. This too is victory, not the conquest of nature, but coexistence with it. Because resilience, in its purest form, is not resistance. It is acceptance. The same acceptance that once let humanity cross frozen continents and outlast extinction. The same acceptance that still hums beneath our restless noise, waiting for silence to awaken it again. Yet survival also depended on something less tangible: cooperation. They moved together through the white silence, a small procession of flickering lights winding across the endless tundra. The snow fell sideways, each gust slicing through the air like a whisper of knives. Ahead, the elder carried the first torch, its flame trembling but unbroken, casting fragile circles of gold on faces drawn by wind and hunger. Behind him, mothers and children trudged in the footprints left by hunters, every step an echo of faith. That warmth, however borrowed, could be shared. In a world where cold ruled with an iron calm, the only heat that mattered came from others. That was the lesson carved into Ice Age existence, that survival was never solitary. The Ice Age was not a time for heroes, not in the way modern myths imagine. It was a time for hands, not names, for those who built, carried, and gave. Beneath mammoth hides and frozen breath, a quieter revolution burned: cooperation. Fire itself was communal. A hearth did not belong to one, but to all. Its light gathered strangers into kin and kin into tribes. Archaeologists have found the blackened remains of ancient hearths scattered across Europe and Siberia, shallow circles of stone where ash still sleeps beneath the soil. Around these, bones were split for marrow, flints sharpened, songs perhaps murmured. They were not merely cooking fires. They were centers of being. To sit by one was to be alive, to be seen, to belong. We tend to think of survival as a battle between individual and nature, the lone hunter, the solitary genius, the defiant human against the storm. But the Ice Age tells another story. The storm always wins alone. The tribe endures together. Imagine an Ice Age encampment at dusk. The wind has quieted after days of relentless howl. The horizon glows faintly, the last violet light sinking behind glaciers that stretch like frozen seas. Inside a shelter, stitched from reindeer hides, stretched over bone and wood, a group gathers around a fire no larger than a child's cradle. Shadows ripple across the curved walls. The air smells of smoke, tallow, and damp fur. A hunter kneels near the entrance, thawing his stiff hands. Beside him, two women carve thin strips of meat and press them onto stones warmed by the fire. A child watches, eyes reflecting orange light. The elder hums softly, a tune so old it may not have words, a vibration of comfort, a rhythm that reminds the heart that it is not alone in its beating. Outside, the temperature has fallen below 40 degrees, but inside this circle of light, warmth expands not just through heat but through presence. The fire feeds the air feeds the people feed each other. This was humanity's true adaptation. Not fangs, not claws, but connection. Anthropologists studying Ice Age remains find evidence of care so tender it borders on miraculous. One Neanderthal skeleton from Shanadar Cave, Iraq, shows a man who lived years with a crushed leg and missing arm. Injuries impossible to survive alone, yet he did. Others must have brought him food, kept him warm, helped him walk. In the brittle dark of prehistory, compassion burned quietly, refusing to go out. Even more astonishing is what we find in their art: carved figurines, beads, ochre handprints on cavern walls. These gestures spoke not of necessity but of meaning, a shared story, a signal passed between generations that said, "We were here, together." In every print of a child's palm beside that of a parent, one can almost hear the whisper beneath time. You belong. It is no coincidence that around the hearth, language flourished. Fire extended the day, allowing thought to stretch beyond hunger and rest. The flames became the first theatre, the first classroom, the first temple. The mind of early humanity, restless, curious, dreaming, found space to grow because there was warmth enough to think. Contrast that with the modern world. Today, many live surrounded by light yet haunted by loneliness. We scroll through the glow of digital hearths, mistaking flickers of attention for connection. We sleep behind insulated walls, but we shiver beneath invisible distances. In an age where survival no longer demands togetherness, we have forgotten that warmth is not merely a physical condition, it is a psychological one. Anthropologists might say that modern humans still bear the echo of Ice Age instincts, a need for tribe, for belonging, for shared purpose. When those are absent, the cold creeps back in, not through weather, but through isolation. It is a strange irony. Our ancestors huddled shoulder to shoulder beneath the northern stars and found safety. We, in our comfort, have scattered into solitude. Where they shared one fire, we tend 1,000 screens. Where they depended on each other, we depend on algorithms. Yet somewhere in us, the memory remains. It flickers when we gather, around a dinner table, a campfire, even a quiet conversation at night. That ancient pattern reawakens. The instinct to lean closer, to share warmth, to feel the pulse of another life near our own. Science gives us glimpses into how this cooperation shaped our biology. Groups that shared food and labor were more likely to survive famines. Infants raised communally had higher chances of reaching adulthood. Even immune systems evolved in social synchrony. Microbes shared through touch-building resilience rather than sickness. The Ice Age tribe, in its interdependence, became a living network. And so, through cold and scarcity, humanity's first social technologies were forged. Trust, empathy, reciprocity. These invisible tools mattered as much as the stone blade or the mammoth spear. They turned survival into something collective, spiritual even, a rhythm of giving and receiving that echoed the balance of nature itself. Some evolutionary psychologists call this the warmth loop. The same brain regions that process physical heat also light up with emotional connection. To be loved is, quite literally, to feel warmer. The ancients may not have known this in words, but they lived it in every shared ember. Picture again the tribe in motion, a small constellation of fires beneath a black, starlit sky. Their breath rises in soft clouds merging with the night. They cross a frozen river, its surface groaning beneath their feet. At the rear, a young boy stumbles, his bundle of wood spilling across the snow. Before he can cry out, a woman behind him kneels, helping him gather the fallen sticks. Her hands, raw and cracked, move with quiet patience. They rise together, the boy's torch rekindled from hers. No one speaks. Yet a message passes between them, as ancient as the flame itself. My fire is yours. That phrase, unspoken yet enduring, is the heart of humanity's story. It carried us through extinction threats, through ice and famine, through the long forgetting of names. It still carries us, even when we pretend it doesn't. The comfort of another presence, the assurance that warmth can be shared. This is what separates us from the dark. By the time the tribe reaches their new camp, the wind has softened. They gather their torches into a single pyre, feeding it with what little wood they've carried. Sparks lift into the sky bright as stars for a moment, then vanish into the snow. Around the flames, laughter rises, brief, fragile, but real. The fire crackles, throwing light across faces no history will record, yet whose choices made history possible. This was the real secret of survival. Not dominance, but devotion. The Ice Age may have sculpted bone and sinew, but it was the heart that kept the species alive. The snow can strip the world bare, but it cannot touch what is shared. The fire may fade, but the warmth endures. Thousands of years later, when we light a candle, when we sit beside a campfire or reach for someone's hand in the dark, we are repeating that ancient act. We are saying, I am here, and so are you. Perhaps that is why fire still calms us. Its rhythm, its glow, the dance of shadow and heat. Beneath the hum of modern life, Some part of our memory still kneels in a circle, passing warmth hand to hand, breath to breath, heart to heart. The Ice Age forged that truth in ice and hunger, that to survive was to share, and to share was to live. And yet, for all the comfort they found in one another, their world was never safe. The cold was not the only thing waiting in the dark. There were beasts that hunted them, storms that tore through their shelters, and dangers that no fire could hold back. But their world held more dangers than the cold alone. Night in the Ice Age was not merely absence of light, it was presence of teeth, a silence so complete that it trembled beneath its own weight, a cold so deep it hollowed bone, and somewhere beyond the flickering ring of the fire, eyes waited, patient, yellow, and merciless. The tribe knew the language of fear. It was older than words. It pulsed in the veins like a second heartbeat, one that quickened at every crack of ice or distant snarl carried by the wind. Survival meant listening to that pulse, not running from it, but walking beside it, step for step, as one would with a shadow. Out there in the darkness, the world was full of hungers that were not human. The predators of the Pleistocene were both majestic and monstrous. There was the Smilodon, the saber-toothed cat, its fangs like ivory daggers longer than a man's hand, its jaws capable of crushing bone in one slow, deliberate bite. There were packs of dire wolves, heavier and more muscular than any wolf alive today, hunting not in twos or threes but in dozens, moving with the precision of a single, breathing machine. And there were the short-faced bears, towering creatures that could sprint faster than a horse for short bursts, their claws curved like sickles, their scent reaching prey from miles away. To encounter one was not battle, but sentence. Imagine standing beneath the aurora, your only weapon a sharpened spear of mammoth bone, your breath turning to frost before your lips, and hearing that growl. The sound would vibrate through your ribs, not as a sound but as a truth, that life was always borrowed. The Ice Age ecosystem was a balance of terror and beauty. For every herd of reindeer or mammoth grazing in silence, there was a predator watching from the shadows. For every frozen river that offered water, there was a sheet of thin ice waiting to break beneath the unwary. And for every warm shelter carved into the earth, there was disease, hunger, or accident waiting quietly within. Paleontologists have pieced together this tapestry from bones and pollen, from the isotope signatures of ancient teeth. They show us that life then was precarious, not in the poetic sense, but in the mathematical. A small shift in temperature, a failed hunt, a broken bone could tilt a family toward extinction. Even in good seasons, food was uncertain. Protein alone was not enough. Fat was life's true currency. Hunters prized marrow and organ meat, scraping every last ounce from carcasses, rendering fat into paste or storing it in skin pouches. A day without it meant weakness. A week without it meant death. Starvation was not rare. It was rhythm. Disease, too, stalked the Ice Age like a silent predator. Without sanitation or medicine, even small infections could turn fatal. A cut from a stone blade, a tooth abscess, a cold caught in the lungs, any could end a life. There were parasites in the meat, spores in the caves, bacteria in the water that no one could see, but everyone feared. Bones unearthed from Ice Age burials tell the story in mute detail. Lesions, stunted growth, healed fractures that never fully set. Children's skeletons with signs of chronic malnutrition. Mothers dead young. Their hips widened by childbirth, but their bones brittle from calcium loss. To live long enough to grow old was a miracle, not an expectation. And yet, even in this harsh calculus of survival, they endured. They learned to read the landscape as a living map, following the migrations of reindeer, learning the signs of thaw and freeze, knowing which plants healed and which killed. They built traps for hares, snares for foxes, and watchfires against lions. They made the wilderness their teacher and fear its lesson plan. To step outside at night in that world was an act of faith. The wind itself could deceive. Snow concealed crevasses deep enough to swallow a person whole. Ice broke without warning. Avalanches roared like gods clearing their throats. But it was not only nature that threatened. Sometimes other humans did. Competition for territory, for prey, for shelter could erupt into violence. Stone points lodged in ancient ribs tell us that even then, we were both prey and predator. Fear wore many faces, and some of them looked like our own. Still, in all this danger, they carried fire forward, that small defiance against the void. They sang, painted, laughed, and whispered stories to the dark, as if reminding it that they too were alive. Now imagine, for a moment, placing a modern person in that same landscape. No phone, no shelter, no sound but wind. The temperature falls below freezing within minutes. The air stings the lungs. The eyes water instantly. Hunger arrives by the second day, a deep ache gnawing behind the ribs. Sleep is fitful. The ground steals warmth faster than fire can give it. Every instinct screams for comfort. And there is none. Would we last a week? Perhaps a few might, but the deeper question is not physical. It is psychological. Could a modern mind even comprehend that kind of fear? To know that death was not distant or dramatic, but constant. A presence you shared space with, breathed beside, and occasionally met face to face. Today, our fears have changed their shape. They hide behind glowing screens, behind deadlines, expectations, and quiet loneliness. Anxiety now lives in the future, in imagination, not in the trees or teeth around us. We no longer hear danger, we think it. But in the Ice Age, fear was tangible. It sharpened the senses. It gave meaning to movement. Every step mattered. Every breath was earned. In a strange way, it gave life its depth. Consider the contrast. Our ancestors woke to uncertainty, not just emotional, but existential. The mammoth herd might not return. The water might freeze over. The child's cough might not stop. Every dawn was a negotiation with fate, and yet they found joy in firelight, in the smell of roasting fat, in the rhythm of footsteps across snow. We wake in comfort, yet carry 1,000 invisible worries. Deadlines, debts, social expectations. The threats have turned inward, abstract, psychological. Evolution armed us for tigers and frost, not for emails and echo chambers. Our nervous systems, ancient and vigilant, now turn against us, inventing dangers where none exist. What the Ice Age demanded externally, we now enact internally. They fought for survival. We fight for peace. There's a strange solace in this comparison. Perhaps danger gave their lives a kind of clarity. When every day could be your last, every meal your salvation, gratitude came easily. Fear was not an enemy. It was awareness, a call to live fully, even in peril. Modern comfort, in contrast, has dulled that edge. We survive without noticing. Our instincts, once tuned to the wilderness, now idle in the quiet hum of controlled climates. We have warmth without wonder, safety without awe, and yet deep in our genes the memory of peril remains. It's why thunder still startles us, why we fear the dark, though we know it hides nothing, why stories of survival pull us towards sleep. That memory is older than civilization, older than speech. It is the hum beneath the heartbeat. Picture again that ancient night. The fire is small, flickering low. Snow drifts through the cracks of the shelter. Outside, the wind rises, carrying the long, distant howl of wolves. A hunter stirs, grips his spear tighter, but does not rise. He listens. The sound grows louder, then fades. He exhales, shoulders easing. Beside him, his daughter dreams, her small hand resting against the hide wall, where frost blooms like white lace. Her mother sleeps with her back to the fire, the faintest smile touching her lips. For a moment, danger forgets them. For a moment, the world allows them peace. That's how they lived. Moment to moment, danger to silence, fear to calm. Not because the world was kind, but because they chose to stay in it anyway. Bones and fossils can tell us what they ate, where they walked, how they died, but not why they kept going. That part lives only in the imagination, in the spaces between the facts. Maybe it was love, maybe duty, maybe something simpler. The refusal to let the fire die. Because even then, amid predators and plague, amid cold and starvation, humanity kept doing the most human thing of all, dreaming of tomorrow. And yet, for every fear, they found a reason to endure, a dream that outlasted extinction. In the depths of a cave, the air is still as sleep. The torch flame trembles, breathing shadows across the walls, shadows that move as if alive. For a heartbeat, the boundary between the living and the painted blurs. A herd of horses gallops through stone. Mammoths sway their tusks beneath an eternal sunset of ochre and black. The painter, a figure small against the cathedral of rock, leans forward, steadying their hand. The charcoal whispers against limestone. Another line, Another life captured in the dark. The sound of distant dripping echoes through the chamber, a rhythm older than music. The artist pauses, looks up. On the cave ceiling, flickering light makes the figures dance. For a moment, the Ice Age itself seems to breathe. And there, within that trembling glow, imagination first learns to speak. The Ice Age is often remembered for its brutality, the cold, the hunger, the endless white horizon. Yet beneath that desolation, something astonishing unfolded. While glaciers advanced and beasts ruled the plains, the human mind ignited. It began quietly, invisibly, with patterns scratched into bone, beads made from shells, pigments mixed from ochre and fat. These small gestures were not about survival in the physical sense. They did not warm the body or fill the stomach, but they fed something deeper, the need to find meaning in a world that could vanish without warning. The first spark of imagination was not born from safety, but from fear, from the desire to see beyond the present moment, to believe that the story of one's life did not end with death or hunger. Art was a promise to the future. We were here, we felt, we dreamed. Archaeologists call this the Upper Paleolithic Revolution, a sudden flowering of creativity between 50,000 and 40,000 years ago. Across continents, humans began to carve, paint, sing, and tell stories. In the limestone caverns of Chauvet and Lascaux, we find walls alive with movement, bison charging, lions prowling, horses running in fluid lines of pigment. In Germany's Swabian Jura, carved ivory figurines of animals, women, and hybrid beings reveal imaginations unbounded by the physical world. And in Slovenia, a hollow bone with carefully drilled holes, the Divja Babe flute, carries notes that still, in theory, could be played today. Each of these creations is a miracle of cognition. They reveal minds capable not only of seeing the world, but of transforming it. To paint a mammoth was to grasp memory and hold it still. To carve a figurine was to speak to the unseen. To play a flute was to summon music from bone, to make beauty from death. Imagine again that torch-lit cave. A group gathers, adults, children, elders, their faces painted with soot and ochre. The artist dips fingers into pigment and gestures toward the wall. The flame's movement makes the painted bison seem to run. A hush falls. Someone hums softly, a low rhythm that echoes the distant thunder of hooves. The cave becomes a theatre, a ritual, a dream. No one calls it art. It is simply part of living, a way to keep memory from fading into snow. This moment, fragile, quiet, almost invisible, marks the birth of what would become religion. Language, philosophy, and story. The brain that once measured wind and hunger now measured possibility. Where survival demanded skill, imagination offered hope. Scientists studying the evolution of cognition see this leap as one of humanity's most mysterious transformations. Geneticists point to the FOXP2 gene linked to language, neuroscientists to the expansion of the prefrontal cortex, where abstraction and foresight live. But even these explanations fall short. For imagination is not simply biology, it is wonder turned inward, a yearning no microscope can quantify. What triggered it? Perhaps cooperation required symbolism, names, stories, and shared myths that bound groups together. Perhaps ritual gave meaning to death and loss, or perhaps it was simply the mind's way of surviving uncertainty, by shaping chaos into narrative. To imagine was to control, if only in thought, what the world refused to yield in truth. In that sense, art became the first fire of the mind, not made from wood and spark, but from curiosity and awe. And how strange that this cognitive revolution bloomed amid such scarcity. When the landscape froze, when animals grew scarce and the sky turned cruel, humans turned inward, toward invention. The worse the cold became, the brighter their inner fire burned. It's as though the universe, testing them, also invited them to create. Their environment was primitive, but their consciousness was not. They could look upon a stone and see a face, upon clouds and see a story, upon death and see continuity. In a world of brute necessity, they practiced imagination, the one act that defied extinction. Some archaeologists argue that these symbolic acts gave humans a selective advantage. Art and music strengthened social bonds, shared myths built unity, and creative problem-solving led to better tools. In short, imagination became survival. To dream was to endure. Yet there was also mystery. When researchers enter those caves today, with electric lights and carbon dating tools, the images still feel alive, as if charged with an energy that refuses explanation. The walls pulse with presence, like an echo of human spirit preserved in pigment and stone. Standing there, scientists often describe an uncanny sensation, a feeling of being watched not by the paintings, but by their makers, by minds not so different from our own. It's a reminder that consciousness is ancient. The thoughts that drive our art, our science, our faith, all were there, shivering in the dark. Thousands of years ago, modern humans too live surrounded by creations of imagination. But ours are digital, luminous, unbound by cave or stone. We build worlds on screens, sculpt identities through pixels, and send our voices across the air like whispers through time. The same instinct that once pressed pigment to rock now animates cinema, literature, and music. We are still painting on walls, only now the walls are virtual. Yet the hunger beneath remains the same: to express, to connect, to say I am here before the darkness swallows the moment. Technology may have changed our canvas, but not our longing. And so, imagination stands as humanity's oldest companion, and perhaps its truest refuge. When the Ice Age demanded endurance, imagination offered escape. When hunger stripped away comfort, story restored purpose. When death seemed inevitable, art whispered continuity. Even now, when the world feels colder in other ways, we return to the same instinct, to create warmth through meaning, to make light, not only with fire, but with thought. A painting on a cave wall and a poem written in the digital age are cousins across millennia, both born from that same defiance of emptiness. We create not to distract ourselves from mortality, but to converse with it. Picture one last scene. A woman kneels in a cavern whose walls shimmer with years of smoke. Around her, children sleep, their faces silvered by torchlight. In her hand, a small piece of ochre. She raises it, tracing a curve upon the stone, the outline of her own hand. She presses her palm against it, blows pigment from her mouth, and pulls away. A red silhouette remains. Her hand, and the memory of her warmth, now belongs to time. Tens of thousands of years later, that same print endures. We stand before it, and without knowing her name, we understand her. The distance collapses. Across ages of ice and silence, her imagination reaches ours. That is the true victory of humanity, not over nature, but over forgetting. We often measure civilization by its inventions: the wheel, the tool, the city. But the first civilization began in the mind, in that moment when a human looked at a blank wall and saw a world waiting to be born. The Ice Age tested the body, art tested the soul, and it was the soul, not sinew, that proved indestructible. Even in our time, the instinct persists. Children doodle on paper before they can speak. Dreamers write stories about futures they'll never see. We imagine not because we must, but because something within us insists that the world is larger than what it shows. Perhaps that is why imagination feels sacred, because it rescues us from extinction, not of body, but of meaning. The fire may keep us alive, but art tells us why we should remain so. Perhaps then survival was never just about warmth, but meaning. Imagine this: you open your eyes to wind, not the kind that hums through city streets or sighs against glass, but a raw, unfiltered wind that tears across an open plain of ice and stone. The air is sharp enough to cut. Your breath becomes a small cloud that freezes before it fades. Every sound, every heartbeat feels magnified beneath the sky's white silence. You are barefoot in time. The year, if it can even be called that, is 30,000 years ago. The last great ice sheets still rule the horizon. The warmth of civilization, the hum of electricity, the comfort of shelter, the illusion of control is gone. There are no roads, no light, no walls. Only horizon, only cold, only you. You have been dropped by some impossible experiment into the Pleistocene. You are as strong as you've ever been, well fed, physically fit. But your body carries none of the knowledge your ancestors once breathed like instinct. The Ice Age does not wait for you to remember. The first shock is sensory. Every breath burns. Your eyelashes frost together. The air smells of nothing, pure absence. Even the light feels alien, pale, diffused, endless. Beneath your boots, if you're lucky enough to have them, the snow crusts over frozen mud. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf's cry stretches across the wind. It is not the haunting sound of wilderness documentaries. It is warning, hunger, and ownership all at once. You realize almost immediately that your body, designed for comfort, is ill-suited to this world. Your fingers stiffen within minutes. Your feet ache with a cold so deep it feels ancient. You cannot think in straight lines anymore. The cold frays your thoughts, replacing them with a primitive awareness. Shelter, fire, food. Every heartbeat becomes a negotiation with the elements. In theory, survival seems simple: find fuel, make fire, hunt, endure. But theory burns slower than frost. You try to strike a spark with 2 stones and fail. You remember the survival videos, the friction methods, the advice to find dry tinder. But the Ice Age is a master of dampness. Everything you touch feels frozen, heavy with ancient moisture. Your fingers, numb and clumsy, can't even manage the knots to build a bowstring. When you breathe, it hurts. When you move, it burns. By the time you find a fallen branch, the sun is already lowering. Not a gentle dusk, but a sudden collapse of light. The cold deepens into something that feels personal, almost sentient. The shadows lengthen and the wind becomes teeth. You realize, with a clarity as brutal as truth, in this world, survival is not a right, it is an art. And you have forgotten how to paint. Experimental archaeologists, those rare souls who try to live as the ancients did, speak of this shock. Often, some have spent nights beneath reindeer hides, relying only on flint tools and fire made by hand. They describe the same pattern: confidence, failure, desperation, humility. Even the most prepared among them lose weight rapidly, their skin cracking, their sleep filled with cold dreams. One researcher who attempted to hunt with replica spears wrote, "I never truly understood hunger until I missed one meal I could not replace." It is not just physical deprivation. It is the unraveling of a worldview, the slow collapse of the assumption that survival is guaranteed. In the Ice Age, you do not plan for tomorrow. You earn it moment by moment. After a day, your hunger speaks louder than thought. You try to eat snow, only to learn the cruel lesson of cold digestion. Your body burns what little energy remains, turning fatigue into delirium. Perhaps you stumble upon an ancient carcass, half buried, half frozen. The meat smells wrong, but instinct wars with disgust. You understand now how easily necessity becomes ritual, how quickly lines blur when survival calls. If by some miracle you find others, a small band of hunters with fur-lined cloaks and eyes that gleam in the dark, you will not understand their language. But their gestures will speak enough: caution, curiosity, pity. They may share warmth, or they may not. In their world, generosity is a luxury, and every mouthful counts. Yet if they do accept you, if you huddle beside their fire and feel its first touch upon your skin, you will weep, not from sadness, but from astonishment that warmth still exists. And then, perhaps, you will begin to see them. Their movements are graceful in their necessity. Each motion is deliberate, from the way they bind a spear point with sinew to the way they layer hides to trap heat. They waste nothing. Bone becomes needle, tendon becomes thread, ashes become salve. Their lives are bound by rhythm, not clock or calendar, but hunger and thaw, moon and migration. When they hunt, it is not sport, it is communion. When they rest, they listen, to wind, to silence, to the language of fire. You begin to notice things that modern life had hidden: how snow changes color with the sun, how silence has its own sound, how darkness breathes differently near water. You begin to feel, not think, your place within a system vast beyond comprehension. Every breath becomes shared, with the trees, with the ice, with the ghosts of mammoths. For the first time, perhaps, you are alive without noise. But the price of that awareness is constant fragility. Your strength fades faster than your ore grows. Your skin splits from cold. Your muscles ache from constant vigilance. The modern body, soft from comfort, untested by scarcity, burns through its reserves. You grow slower, clumsier, light-headed. You dream of blankets, bread, and the dull hum of electricity. You imagine warmth not as luxury, but as a miracle. And yet, amid the suffering, something changes. A strange calm arrives, a reverence you did not expect. The endless horizon no longer feels empty, but infinite. The cold no longer feels cruel, but honest. You begin to see beauty where once there was only survival. The blue shimmer of morning frost, the hush of snow over silence, the fire's small defiance in a sea of night. It dawns on you, slowly, painfully, that the people who lived here were not merely enduring the world, they were of it. Those who have braved modern Arctic expeditions speak of the same transformation. At first, the cold strips you down to instinct. Then, it strips you of ego. What remains is awe. The humbling recognition that life, even in its most fragile form, is magnificent simply because it persists. You begin to understand why early humans painted, sang, carved, not to escape the cold, but to translate it, to turn experience into meaning. The Ice Age, brutal as it was, forced them to imagine not out of comfort, but out of necessity. You too begin to dream differently, no longer in colour and convenience, but in texture and pulse. You dream of warmth as emotion, of fire as prayer, and yet even awe cannot sustain the body. After days without proper food, your breath becomes shallow, your vision dim. You look at the horizon and see not death, but vastness. The people who belonged here would continue, hunting, laughing, surviving. You would not, because you were not shaped by this world. Your muscles too slow, your senses too dull, your thoughts too distracted. Civilization has made you clever, but not wise in the ways that matter here. The Ice Age does not hate you. It simply does not need you. In the final hours, you might sit by a fire you barely managed to build, watching its light dance against stone. The flame flickers, fragile, defiant, as though echoing the fires your ancestors once tended. You realize in that flicker what survival truly meant to them. It was not comfort, it was reverence. Every breath was earned. Every meal, a miracle. Every dawn, a victory whispered into darkness. And suddenly, your own world, with its endless abundance, feels faintly absurd. We live surrounded by warmth, yet we rarely feel it. We have conquered hunger, yet seldom taste gratitude. We have banished silence, yet forgotten to listen. The Ice Age, cruel as it was, held something we have misplaced: the intimacy of existence. If you could return, if you could wake once more in your own bed, your skin thawed, your hunger gone, you would never look at comfort the same way again. The hum of a heater would sound like a hymn, the softness of bread, a marvel, the light of a match, a revelation. You would understand what your ancestors already knew, that survival was not measured by how long you lived, but how deeply you felt. And so, maybe the answer is not whether we could survive, but whether we should. The wind has returned, not the gentle wind of spring or the restless wind of storms, but that deep, ancient current that once ruled the edges of the world. It sweeps across an empty plain of white, moving through silence the way memory moves through time. Somewhere within that silence, a figure walks again, the same one who opened our story. A single traveler crossing an endless field of snow. The blizzard wraps around them, turning shape and sound into blur. Their breath drifts upward like prayer smoke, freezing before it fades. The question rises once more, as soft as falling frost. Could one of us survive here? Now, after all that has been seen, the fire, the hunger, the endurance, the imagination, the question feels different. It is no longer about strength or cleverness or will. It is about something quieter, older, remembrance. The Ice Age was not a punishment. It was a teacher, patient, merciless, and wise. It taught our ancestors the language of scarcity, and through it, the meaning of gratitude. It carved humility into their bones, compassion into their gatherings, reverence into their songs. It demanded that every breath be earned, every fire be shared, every death be honored. In its silence, they learned to listen. In its darkness, they learned to dream. And in its cold, they discovered warmth, not as comfort, but as connection. They survived not because they were stronger, but because they remembered the world as sacred. When glaciers moved across continents, they did not only sculpt valleys and rivers, they sculpted consciousness. Imagine standing where ice once reached hundreds of meters above your head. Beneath that weight, the land slept for millennia. And yet, from that frozen slumber, something miraculous awakened. Life. Moss pushing through cracks, animals migrating along edges of thaw, humans tracing constellations in skies that had no name. We often imagine the Ice Age as a time of terror, a frozen prison from which life barely escaped. But to those who lived it, it was also an age of intimacy. Every tree, every stone, every flicker of flame mattered. They lived without excess, without distraction, without illusion. Their survival depended not on domination, but on harmony. An understanding that the earth was not an enemy to be conquered, but a presence to be honored. Perhaps in that sense, they were freer than we are now. In our modern age, warmth is constant. We banish night with light, hunger with abundance, silence with noise. Yet for all our comfort we grow restless. The same cold that once carved meaning into our souls has been exiled, and with it, a certain depth of being. The Ice Age people did not have time for loneliness. They had each other. They did not ask what the world owed them. They asked what they owed the world. Now we wake to thermostats and glowing screens. But the deeper warmth, the one that comes from belonging, flickers faintly, hidden beneath the static. We have learned to survive everything except ourselves, and so the ice still whispers, not in words but in memory, in the shiver that runs through us when the wind howls against the window, in the hush that falls when snow covers the city and the world forgets to hurry. These are not just meteorological moments, they are messages, reminders of who we were when the world was still new, and who we might yet become again if we remember how to listen. There are scientists today who study the ice not for its chill, but for its memory. Within frozen cores drilled deep beneath Antarctica, they find tiny bubbles of air, time capsules from epochs long vanished. Each layer, each trapped breath, carries the story of Earth's patience. Through these frozen archives, we glimpse our shared past, volcanic winters, cosmic dust, ancient smoke. But there is something else there too, something no microscope can measure. The quiet weight of endurance. Every trapped molecule of air is a testament that life continued, that even when the world trembled on the edge of extinction, the pulse of existence never stopped. We are the inheritors of that pulse. We are the breath released when the ice finally exhaled. And perhaps that is what the ice still teaches, that the story of survival is not about conquest or control, but about continuity, the slow, tender persistence of being alive. Against all odds, if you listen closely, you can almost hear it now. Not the roar of glaciers, not the crack of frost, but the soft, rhythmic breathing of the earth beneath its winter sleep. The same rhythm that guided hunters under starlight, that echoed in the footsteps of those who carried torches across the tundra. The same rhythm that beats quietly within you. When you close your eyes, you can feel it. The weight of time pressing gently against your skin. The whisper of ancestors moving through your veins. Their endurance is not distant history. It is the reason you exist. The fire they kindled has never gone out. It burns still, in cities and forests, in hearts and homes, in every act of creation and care. We are the warmth they imagined into being. And yet, the lesson of the ice is not nostalgia. It does not ask us to return to the caves. It asks us to remember the balance, to live once more as if the world is precious, finite and alive. Humility, not domination. Gratitude, not entitlement. Connection, not isolation. For in the end, survival is not measured in centuries or civilizations. It is measured in awareness, in how deeply we recognize that our lives are interwoven with the cold, the light, and the silence that birthed us. To live without reverence is to forget where the fire came from. Night falls across the tundra once more. The blizzard quiets. The snow glows faintly, reflecting a sky full of frozen stars. Somewhere, a lone ember still burns. Small, steady, defiant. It could be a campfire or the last glow of human memory. It does not matter. Its light is enough. The wind moves gently through the dark, carrying whispers older than language. If you listen, they sound almost like words. You are not apart from us. You are our continuation. Remember the cold that shaped your warmth. The figure who walked through the storm slows now. The blizzard softens into drifting snow. The sky opens, revealing the faint shimmer of dawn. Each step feels lighter, less desperate, as if the earth itself has loosened its grip. The horizon glows pale gold. The air still bites, But it no longer feels hostile. It feels holy. They pause, close their eyes, and breathe. For a moment, the centuries collapse. The ancient and the modern, the cold and the warmth, the past and the present, all dissolve into one vast silence. This is what the ice still teaches, that endurance is not the absence of fear, but the presence of meaning. That survival is not resistance to the world, but belonging within it. That every breath we take is a continuation of the first fire ever lit against the dark. So now, as the snow falls softly outside your own window, let the lesson settle within you. Close your eyes. Feel the warmth of your breath. Somewhere deep within, the same fire still flickers, the one they carried through ages of frost. The wind hums its ancient lullaby, and the earth turns slowly beneath it, as it always has. Close your eyes and imagine the fire's glow, for even now the ice still watches and still forgives, and in that forgiveness you may finally rest. Fade to wind, fade to embers, fade to snow.